Okay, we are live and recording now. So let's dive into the conversation today. So you probably saw from the title that it's something regarding the lines of, do you need to track your food to see progress? Whether it's fat loss, whether it's your goal is to purposely build muscle, do you need to actually track your food to lose the weight, to lose the body fat, to keep it off for good? Or to build the muscle and purposely like build your glutes, build your arms, build your back, build your arms, whatever areas you want to improve. So kind of first off, let's dive into where this question really comes from and why do we even ask this question. You might think it's a common sense, like we want to know if we need to actually do this or not, but there's reasons why people ask this question when the idea of tracking your food gets brought up. Number one is people have this idea that tracking your food is too much work. Like, it's really taxing, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of thought, takes a lot of effort. It's very time consuming. People tend to think that. Also, when it comes to tracking your food, people tend to think that it's something, or they, tend to think that if you start tracking your food, then that means that you need to do it the rest of your life. Where most people don't want to use MyFitnessPal or track their food for the rest of their life. Also, some people find it confusing. Like you hear about all these people talking about tracking macros, calories, carbs, even people talking about tracking net carbs, people tracking sodium, sugar, all this stuff, fiber. So there's a lot of variables you could end up trying to track. So sometimes it can seem overwhelming or confusing because you don't know which variables to actually focus on the most. Also, some people have experience with tracking and they had gotten obsessive about it for some reason, whether it be, trying to hit a specific number or trying to hit these specific macros for protein, carbs, and fats, and trying to make all of these fit, together, and that feeling really overwhelming to, hit all three of those numbers all at once at the same time. Also, people thinking that they have to track their food forever. I kind of already mentioned that point. And also, too, people ask this question if they have to track their food to see progress because as humans, we tend to want to do the least amount of work to get the same result, which is totally normal. Like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't guilty of this, of wanting to do the bare minimum to get the same result, right? If I can make $1 million by working 1 hour a week, that'd be great to do, but it's not always possible. So those are the reasons why we ask these questions. So they're really valid. And I totally understand why, thinking about the idea of tracking your food, why it would feel like something, I don't know if I want to go that route and do, I kind of want to just eat more quote unquote intuitively, which eating intuitively for the purpose of losing weight and building muscle is a whole nother story, maybe for a whole other video to talk about because it doesn't really work out. But people want to go that route, or they just want to make healthier choices and see the results without having to pull out MyFitnessPal. But is that actually doable? Is that actually possible? And this is the age-old question. This is the $1 million question that a lot of people want the answer to. So let's dive into if we need to do this in general. Do we need to track our food to see progress? And I'll start off by saying that my clients, all of the clients that I work with, do track our food in some capacity because it just allows us to really control things more, and it allows us to really know exactly what we're putting in our body, so we know exactly what's producing the result that we're currently getting, so we know what to adjust. But do you, in general, person listening or watching this, do you have to track your food to see progress? The short answer is no, you don't have to, not necessarily, but it will be a lot harder to see the progress you want. And I mean, at this point, really a lot harder to see the progress you want without tracking your food. And here's the big reason why. It has to do with the food environment that we are surrounded with now in the year 2024. Think about, let's say 20 years ago, back in 2004, how much access to processed foods, fast food, restaurant foods you had back then. It was probably less. It was probably less access. Like you didn't have a fast food place maybe literally around every single corner. Like there was probably, a couple on each main road in your town or in your city, wherever you live. But it wasn't literally at each corner. And you also didn't have DoorDash or Uber Eats or all these things that you could literally have these foods then delivered to your door. Like let's say if the weather's crappy and you don't feel like cooking, but you don't also want to drive outside and go to a restaurant or a fast food place or Chipotle to pick up food. If we didn't have DoorDash and Uber Eats and all these things, you're more likely to say, you know what? I'm just going to cook food at home because I don't feel like going out and getting it because it's cold, the weather's crappy, whatever it is. But with Uber Eats and DoorDash, we have that third alternative of having these things delivered directly to us. Also, think about all of the processed foods that you see in the grocery store. There's so many more available to us, and they take up a larger portion of the grocery store than what they did probably 20 years ago back in 2004. And because of that, we're more tempted to buy those items. So we're more likely to have those items in the house. So we're more likely to fall into eating those items more often. Think about also, tracking your calories. A very good analogy for this, or tracking your food in general, is the same as tracking your finances. If you, let's say in 2004, wanted to save money each month because you're saving up for this, big vacation you want to go on every single year, it probably was a lot easier to do in 2004 versus 2024. Well, not only because of inflation and how much more expensive things are now, but also just because you could just say, hey, we're gonna go out less. We're gonna stay at home more, and just simply the act of that in 2004 would probably lead to you, spending less money, or saying we're gonna go to the store less. We're gonna take less trips to the store, and you'd probably save money that way. But now in 2024. You don't necessarily have to go out, kind of the DoorDash example too. You don't have to go out to actually get food delivered to you or get food, but not even food related, even having other items, clothes, other household things that you might buy because, it's good decor around the house, or you like the way these shelves look or whatever, things like that. You're probably buying a lot more of those items now because of Amazon, because it's so easy to access those items. It's so easy to shop online. And it's so easy to get those things immediately and pay. And literally within 24 hours, the thing's delivered to your door, even sometimes less. Like there have been multiple times I've ordered stuff off of Amazon and it's come to my house and been delivered in like 4 hours, which is just insane to think about. So even the access we have to spending money that way. Also, too, think about like all of these subscriptions you can buy with Netflix, with all these other channels. Like I literally feel like every single channel on cable has like their own streaming service connected to it where you can pay, a certain amount of money, $5 a month, $10 a month to subscribe to that. And so you have these like subscriptions then available to you too at the click of a finger online or on your like Apple TV or smart TV, whatever you have, versus back in 2004, like you just had a cable where you had to call someone to get set up and those things weren't available. So in the year 2004, you could probably get away with just saying, okay, we're going to not leave the house as much and not going to go out and do things as much. Stay home, entertain ourselves at home, all this stuff, and go shopping less. And you probably would naturally just save money month to month that way. But in 2024, because we have so much more access to these quick and easy ways to spend money, you probably need to actually track your finances a lot more diligently to make sure you're saving a certain amount of money each month, which the same thing goes for tracking your food, losing body fat. Like you're basically budgeting your calories or budgeting your food week to week, month to month, day to day to see a certain result. And that budgeting was so much easier in 2004 when we didn't have access to these super high calorie density foods that tasted so good and that were so easy to overeat, where now like those things are everywhere and they're there at like the click of a finger with DoorDash or whatever, and it's just so much harder. So we have to, because we're so tempted by these highly processed foods so much more frequently and we have so much more access to them, we need a higher level of control or a higher level of detail when it comes to what we're actually putting in our body to see the results we want. We don't need to track, and this is like a big misconception, we don't have to track every single thing. We don't have to track calories, protein, fiber, carbs, fats, sugar, saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium. We don't have to track all those, but we have to at least track calories to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be a specific number. It can be a range. That's what I use with clients. We have to track protein. Doesn't have to be a specific number. It can be a range. That's what I use with clients too. We have to be aware of our fiber intake, probably make sure we're getting plenty of, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, things like that. But those are kind of the three main things you really need to kind of track and focus on ranges instead of specific numbers. Instead of like all these, multiple different things you could, stress about. And, if you're new to tracking, you could only just track calories and see really good results. And then, as you get a little bit more advanced, you can track the calories and the protein and see even better results. And then, as you get even more advanced, you can track the calories, protein, and be a little bit more conscious of fiber and see even better results from there. But it's just, I wish I could say that, if you've been struggling with losing weight for a big portion of your life, or you've been struggling for at least a while, for at least multiple months, I wish I could say, you're probably going to be able to see the results you want without tracking your food. But the chances are a lot more slim that you're going to be able to do that. And it's very likely that you will have to track your food because of all of these temptations and just how easy it is to overeat because of them. And, I think people focus so much on those negatives of tracking your food that I mentioned in the beginning of this. Like, they feel like it's too much work. It's too time consuming. You don't want to do it the rest of your life. It seems confusing. Some people get obsessive about specific numbers. But the thing is, all of those they don't have to be your reality. Like, tracking your food really isn't that time consuming. It's time consuming maybe if you make these really big recipes that have 20 plus ingredients to them. You really overcomplicate the foods that you are making on a daily basis. And you also are trying to eat different things all the time for every single meal, every single day. Then tracking gets a little bit more time consuming. But if you keep at least breakfast and lunch and your snacks relatively similar throughout the day, you choose very simple, easy meals to make and track, and you keep those consistent, then tracking, as far as time consuming, it really isn't that time consuming. Like, if I were to pull up my phone, which is a really cool feature with the phones, is you can go and see how much time you spend on each app each day. And I've looked at my MyFitnessPal before on, periods of time where I was really diligently tracking every day. And the time I'm actually spending in the app is maybe like 5 minutes a day. And that's very minimal. As I work with clients in the beginning, it feels a little time consuming tracking, but as they go forward and they realize these strategies of, eating similar meals throughout the day, and knowing how to balance their meals appropriately, learning, how to make very simple meals that help them to see the results they want, they find that tracking their food really doesn't take that much extra time compared to not tracking. But it gives them the certainty to know that they're actually in the calorie range they need to be in to see the progress they want. Also, the misconception about having to track food for the rest of your life. Just because you do something to learn new skills, to learn more about food, doesn't mean you're going to have to do that forever, right? Like, tracking your food is a skill. Tracking food allows you to gain so much knowledge regarding food. So then once you've reached your end goal and you've reached, the fat loss level that you want or the weight loss that you want, and you're ready to just maintain that for life, you've built so many skills, you've learned so many things about food along the way, the composition of food, what 100 calories of chicken breast actually really looks like. You've learned so much about that. So then when you decide to not track, you kind of already have that information stored in your brain, and you can just eyeball things. You can estimate things. You just get used to okay, this is the rough size of chicken breast that usually fills me up, or this is the rough size of mashed potatoes that usually fills me up and, is good for me maintaining my weight. You learn those things along the way. So just because you decide to track, for the next 6 months or the next year, to lose the weight you want to lose doesn't mean you have to do it forever. So I think that's a big misconception there. Also, like I said before, people make it confusing and they focus on, oh, like MyFitnessPal is telling me I have to eat this many grams of sugar, and now the sugar number is like red on MyFitnessPal because I went over it. Now I'm messing up. Don't even worry about that. Don't stress about things. Focus on a calorie range. If you feel good with focusing on a protein range too, focus on that too. If you feel good with that, focus on a rough fiber goal. Focus on those 3 things. Disregard the rest and just try to make good, conscious health choices, and you're going to be perfect. Because if you are hitting your calorie range and your protein range and your fiber roughly, those 3 things and making adjustments to that are going to be what's going to move your progress forward the most. Stressing about sugar intake, saturated fat intake, all those things isn't necessary unless you have some kind of specific condition where you need to really limit that. But if you're just focusing on fat loss and weight loss and trying to overall get healthier, if you're focusing on whole foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, hitting that calorie and protein requirement to get you to a healthy body weight, then like you're already checking those boxes. Also, don't stress about a specific number. Kind of already mentioned this. I implement ranges with all of my clients. So we usually have like 150 calorie range, maybe even up to 200 calorie range to shoot for. So instead of stressing about, oh, I have to hit 2,000 calories on the dot, you might have to hit somewhere between 1,900 and 2,100. And just that little bit of flexibility gives you that freedom to not feel forced into a specific number. Same thing with protein. Protein, we usually do a 20 gram protein range for clients, but that allows you to not stress about a specific number. And even clients who get very advanced, and we do implement a carb and fat guideline too, just to really emphasize consistent performance in the gym day to day. Those clients, we still don't even focus on specific numbers. They still have a fat range and a carb range that's pretty wide. And I always tell them, as long as you're even close to this range, then that's going to be golden. Even if you don't even fall in that range, it's not going to really matter much. So there's a way to go about tracking where it doesn't feel as obsessive either. And also a point I forgot to mention too, I've had so many conversations with clients where in the past, they've tried tracking their calories or tracking their food, and it felt very restrictive. And I asked them, okay, so what was the calorie range you were aiming for? And the calorie range that they were aiming for was like 1,200 calories. And they were like, I don't know if I really want to go back to tracking food because it was really restrictive to me before. And I'm like, have all these alarm bells going off in my head, like, well, of course it was restrictive. Of course it felt like that because you were aiming for 1,200 calories. If you're aiming for that low of calories, regardless of what you do, it's going to feel extremely restrictive. But when I work with clients and we build their calories up initially, if they have been under eating, going through the priming phase, it allows them to eat more food. And then when we go into a fat loss phase, we don't have to cut calories super low. So the calorie counting part of it actually doesn't even feel really that restricted because their calorie goal just isn't so low. So that's something else to think, is that like your lens and the way you view tracking food might be skewed by the super restrictive numbers you were just aiming for that you didn't have to actually aim for to see progress. So that's another thing to think about too. With even these potential negatives, though I just kind of explained, like they're really not that negative compared to the misconceptions people have about it. There are a ton of benefits when it comes to tracking your food. And probably the number one benefit of tracking your food to see the progress you want is it prevents you from doing things too extreme. So if you know scientifically that you have to eat less calories than what you burn to lose body fat, here's what most people do. And here's probably what you've done in the past. You've probably cut out all carbs or cut out an entire meal or maybe even a couple of meals out of your diet. Maybe you've really drastically reduced your portion sizes because you're like, okay, I have to eat less calories than what I burn. So I'm starting this diet. So I'm starting to put in the work. I'm going to 110% make sure I'm eating less than what I burn. So I'm going to probably overdo it. I'm probably going to restrict myself a little bit or a little bit harder than what I actually need to, but I want to make sure that I'm in a calorie deficit. I want to make sure I'm burning body fat. So I'm going to, kind of go to the extreme to be certain of that. But what tracking your food allows you to do is it allows you to achieve a calorie deficit. It allows you to be eating less than the calories that you burn, but you don't have to go to such extreme levels because you're tracking the data, you're tracking the information, and you know whether you're in a calorie deficit or a fat loss phase or not. You're not just kind of guessing. Like when we're guessing, we tend to overdo things just to 110% make sure. Like think about if you were, you were in a race, right? You were doing a 100-meter dash and you were racing against, 5 other opponents. And let's say there were 2 setups to the race. One race was you guys were all racing at the same exact time. So you could like directly see who was behind you, who was in front of you, who was right beside you, whatever. And then the other setup to the race was you guys just raced by running individually and you couldn't see the other person running. Like, you guys came to the track at different times of the day and just ran 100 meters and you got timed, and then whoever had the fastest time won. When you are running that race with the 5 people all at the same time, and you can see and you have the information of where these people are and placing, if you're far ahead of whoever is in second place, you can kind of let up on the gas and maybe not push yourself to 110% to win that race, right? Like if you're way far ahead by, I don't even know, by like 20 feet, you actually don't have to go full throttle and go to the extreme with how hard you're pushing yourself those last couple of seconds of the race because you already know you're so far ahead. With the other example of running the race at separate times, when you guys are going to the track at different times and don't see each other, you are going to go all out. You're going to go to the extreme. You're going to push yourself as hard as possible for that 100 meters to run as fast as possible to make sure that you're going to win, because you can't see if you're actually ahead of these people or not in the moment because you don't have that information available to you. And that's a really good analogy for not tracking your food versus tracking your food. Not tracking your food, you're going to go to the extreme to achieve that calorie deficit because you actually really don't know. You're just kind of guessing and hope that you're in a calorie deficit by whatever extreme measures you take. With the example of actually tracking your food, you're able to let up on the gas a little bit, not bring your calories too low if you don't have to see the progress you want, which is so much better long term. Like imagine if every single race you ran, you couldn't see your opponents and had to go 110%. That person, or if you were in that scenario, you're probably more likely to maybe suffer an injury throughout your running career because you're always going 110%. Versus the other scenario, when you have these people beside you, you can actively see and have the data and the information to see where you're at in regards to their placing. You might be able to let up on the gas a little bit on some of the races because you're way far ahead of these people. And then that might allow you to run for a longer period of time with your running career and not suffer as many injuries because you aren't going balls to the wall every single race in order to win. And same thing goes for, dieting, fat loss phases. We want to, achieve the calorie deficit, but we don't want to have to go balls to wall to achieve it. We want to do like almost the bare minimum of, okay, I'm in the bare minimum calorie deficit. I need to see fat loss. And that way we can pace ourselves. And that way we don't suffer an injury or AKA rebound as hard because we're restricting so hard. We don't end up gaining the weight back afterwards. We don't end up dealing with these negative side effects of hunger skyrocketing, feeling sluggish, feeling moody, poor sleep, all these things that I think I talked about in potentially it was either last week's live or last week's podcast, I don't remember, but all the signs of under eating, we don't deal with that when we know exactly how many calories we're eating and we don't have to overdo it. So that is one huge benefit of tracking your food, is it allows you to let off on the gas a little bit and not do the extreme to achieve a calorie deficit or to achieve fat loss, because that extreme is what causes you to rebound so hard. So that's like the big thing. Like if I could scream that in a megaphone on the rooftops to everybody who questions tracking their food to see progress, I wish I could, because it it just allows you to take a actual moderate approach, and the moderate approach is what leads to long-term successful results. Also too, like, it allows you to fully manipulate and control how your body changes over time. If you're not tracking, you're really just guessing. Sure, you can try to listen to your hunger and try to eat before you get full, or if you're trying to gain weight or, put on muscle, eat a little bit more after you feel full, but you don't fully know, and your results are going to be less predictable that way. Whereas if you're tracking your food, you can fully manipulate how your body changes, if you gain weight, if you lose weight, if you maintain weight. And that level of control just also gives you a level of like certainty and peace within your journey. And you tend to feel less anxious, and you tend to also like not freak out if the scale goes up tomorrow, because yesterday, hey, I tracked everything I ate. I was right within my calorie goal. So I know for sure this spike on the scale is just water weight. Whereas if you're not tracking your food, you don't actually know that, and you second guess yourself and think, maybe I did overeat yesterday, because you don't have that actual physical information in front of you that tells you that you didn't. So that's also another really big thing. Another really big benefit of tracking your food is, especially the way I implement it with clients, is it allows us to really fully implement planned maintenance phases or diet breaks without going overboard and feeling guilty. So it allows you to then take a break from being in a fat loss phase, bring your calories up to maintenance, eat that maintenance level calories, and not feel guilty about it, versus if you are in a fat loss phase and you're not tracking your food, so you're just kind of doing something probably a little bit too extreme to achieve that calorie deficit or that fat loss, and then you decide, I'm going to take a break this week from trying to eat less, and I'm going to try to just maintain my weight. You don't know how much you're eating because you're not tracking it. So you probably end up feeling a little bit guilty because you're like, oh, I'm eating more than what I ate last week. There's a chance I could be eating more than my maintenance. It could be gaining some weight back. And then that guilt starts to creep in a little bit. And then kind of my last point of the benefit of tracking your food is it allows you to have the flexibility and freedom to lose weight, lose fat while eating foods that you love. Obviously, there has to be moderation in it. You can't just eat Five Guys, a big burger, and a large fry every day and expect to see fat loss unless you're burning a crazy amount of calories per day. But you can have a slice of pizza or two, or maybe even 3 slices of pizza every Friday. Log it beforehand, figure out how it fits within the rest of your day on Friday. Change the rest of your day so you're able to still hit your calories and protein at the end of the day while including those 3 pieces of pizza, and go to bed guilt-free, knowing, hey, I still hit all of my targets at the end of the day while enjoying this pizza. I still lost fat while enjoying the pizza. And if you do that consistently, you'll see the results over time. You'll see the results over 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and see, wow, my pictures, I look so much leaner after this 8-week period. And I did include multiple days where I had a little bit of ice cream, multiple days where I had a little bit of pizza. And this was such a freeing experience for me with my relationship with food back when I did this in 2013, 2014. That's when I really started tracking my food and learning about how the body actually reacts to certain foods and calories and protein and all this. And I started to see firsthand, hey, I've had 2 Chips Ahoy cookies every single day this week, and I still hit my calories and my protein at the end of the day, and I still lost body fat. I'm like, wow, I used to think that if I had cookies during my fat loss phase or during my dieting phase, that I wasn't going to lose fat. No matter how many calories I ate. I thought just having a couple of cookies to end my night, it would ruin everything, but it doesn't. And by not tracking your food, you aren't able to fully experience that and fully experience the power of how the body actually really reacts when it comes to fat loss or fat gain. Assuming you're hitting your calorie and protein targets and eating mostly whole foods, right? If you're eating just protein shakes and cookies and hitting your calorie and protein goals, you probably still will hit body fat or lose body fat if you're eating, the right amount. But you aren't going to feel as great doing it. But if most of your foods are whole foods, you can include these cookies, the ice cream, this stuff in there very regularly in the right amounts and still see fat loss. And that is true freedom. Knowing that you can have these foods and still see your body change the way you want it to change without sabotaging yourself is I wish I could explain just how experiencing that firsthand really changed my life and how it's changed so many of my clients' lives as far as how they view food. Like, I've had so many clients message me about how, like, before the program, they thought they had these same food rules in their head that they couldn't eat this and still see fat loss over time. And then they actually like see it firsthand within themselves, and like their mind's just blown. And the way they view food just changes forever. And the way they feel so much more in control of their body now too. So, you know, I just want you to think about all these things when you're trying to weigh out the pros and cons of, you know, should I track my food or not? I think in this day and age, you still can not track your food and just make food choices throughout the day and, you know, achieve a calorie deficit and lose fat. But it's very hard to do without going the extreme level that leads to rebound. And tracking your food allows you that higher level of detail that you likely need to actually do it without suffering. Sure, you know, there's a little bit of growing pains with learning how to track your food, you know, learning how to do that in the beginning. But by suffering through those little bit of growing pains in the beginning, it allows you to then not suffer as much long term when it comes to losing the body fat or keeping it off, versus if you go the quote unquote easier route of not tracking your food to try to lose the fat. Sure, you're not dealing with those initial growing pains of like learning how to pull out MyFitnessPal and being consistent with that and learning how to do that, but you're also dealing with much more suffering long term trying to lose the fat and keep it off that way, since, like I said, you're going to resort to probably more extreme measures to lose it if you're not tracking. And you're also going to, you know, deal with the mental discouragement of your results not being as predictable because you really don't know for sure how much you're eating on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully this was helpful and eye-opening. And like I said, like I mentioned in the beginning of this, definitely make sure you invite your friends to the group if you want to win the $150 gift card for first place or $100 gift card for second place. Got to reach 1,600 members. Make sure you message them if you invite them and tell them to join. That way that entry counts for you. And I will be announcing the winner, assuming we hit 1,600, next Wednesday. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one.